It's summer, a perfect time for travel and photography, and consequently a perfect time to think about what camera you want to take on holiday with you. There's only one problem.
Don't you just hate how heavy camera gear is? Why can't you take all of this and put it in a smaller, cheaper package? Well, you can.
When you think of full frame, you probably envision something like this. Or perhaps even something like this.
But today, I'm more interested in travelling light. That's why I've brought along this.
This is the Olympus Trip 35. It was introduced in the late 60s and marketed towards the traveller who wanted to take high quality snaps. I know I spent all of our video about iPhoneography rabbiting on about how simple and easy to use your average SLR is, but this camera is truly minimalistic. As David Bailey made note of in a well-known advert, it's completely automatic. The camera works out the exposure and you just click the shutter. It has a solar-powered selenium light meter, no battery required. You get a 40mm f2.8 Zico lens and just 2 shutter speeds. In the spirit of the camera's naming scheme, I've decided to take a bit of a trip myself. Back to my old school, to take some trip-like photos.
2 shutter speeds, is that it? That's all you need really. The camera works out the brightness of the scene you're photographing and chooses a shutter speed and aperture combination to make a good exposure. It's essentially in P mode all the time. You have 1/200th and 1/40th of a second, but since there's no mirror, shooting at the slowest speed handheld is no problem. It's got a rather interesting focusing ring. You've got these little pictures here that represent approximately the field of view you should use each one for, but if you want to get a little bit more technical, there is a traditional focusing scale on the bottom. Inside the viewfinder, there's a second window, a bit like the Fuji Digital X100T. It shows you which focus setting you're on, so you can refocus without ever taking your eye from the finder. All this simplification equates to one thing. You can take this camera literally anywhere, it won't get in the way, and when you see something interesting, you can just snap it. The best part about the Trip 35 is it's a full frame camera with an amazing Zico lens, and I'm using it one-handed. There's definitely something to be said about the precision of manual exposure control, but to be able to forget about all of that and just focus entirely on composition does make shooting with this camera quite special.
I don't mind the automation of this camera at all. Taking photos with it still feels organic, you still feel involved in what you're doing. Funnily, because I focus so much more on just being in the moment and clicking the shutter at the right time, I almost feel closer to the scenes I capture with this camera, as though I experience them more thoroughly because I'm less distracted by the shooting process.
I really like this camera. On first glance it can be hard to take seriously. I mean, just look at how small and cheap and cheerful it all is. But put the right film through it and you will be astounded by the results. It's everything I'd want in a camera on holiday or on the streets. It's discreet, it's well made, and it takes some brilliant images.